Okay.
Hey guys, and welcome to Tnashi's Movie Corner, and for today's review, I'll be reviewing The Forest, which came out January 8th of this year, and was directed by Jason Zeta and stars Downley Dormer. There's a few other people. They're kind of minor characters, though. They don't really play much of a part, except for Taylor Kinney, who did Aiden. Anyway, so Dormer plays twins. She plays a girl named Sarah, who's going into this forest at the base of Mount Fuji, known as a suicide forest, and she's looking for her sister Jess, who has disappeared in this forest. So the movie's about her going into it, trying to find it, and she's told up front that there's these not real spirits. They call them something else, so I'm sorry I got it wrong. But for the sake of doing this review, there are these kind of spirits in this forest, but what they do is they mess with your mind. Especially, they mess with your mind when you have feelings of fear, loss, and that kind of thing. They kind of play with your emotions, and they tempt you to where you want to kill yourself. So that's kind of the basic idea for this movie, right? And generally, movies come out in January. There's always, like, horror movies. There's always a horror movie every year. Typically, they're not very good, honestly. They tend to be dreadful. Was this movie dreadful? No, not really. But was it good? We'll get into that. So anyway, just up front, seeing this movie, went to see it, okay, depending on when this is uploaded. Saw this on the 16th, which, was Saturday. And saw Hateful Eight the day before Friday. There was about double the amount of people for this screening as there was for Hateful Eight. That was about 14, including myself and my brother. And that also includes 4 children. So I started out this movie, I was like, man, I don't understand why these kids would be here. This is a horror movie. This just doesn't make sense. By the end of the movie, I was like, okay, yeah, I get why they were here. And that's going to give me what the biggest con of the movie, which is this is supposed to be a horror movie. There wasn't much horror to it. Yeah, just it didn't really work for that. So I'm gonna get into that in just a minute, but let's go over the good first. Natalie Dormer does a pretty decent role as the main character. I actually bought into her character. I bought into her looking for her sister, and I was invested in the story from an aspect of it, at least, because the way they set up this movie at the beginning is less more. It's less more. It's less. I was getting ahead of myself. It's less about the actual horror at the beginning of it, and more about her character and setting up her character, establishing her to us, and why we actually care about her, which is something you don't normally see in horror film. So I give that props for actually doing that. For taking that kind of jump. That shift from what I come to expect from a horror movie. So yeah, I do care about her character. I want her to find her sister. Her sister's disappeared in this forest, and this forest is actually based in reality. It is a forest in Japan at Mount Fuji that they go into to die. And even though they didn't film on location there for the actual forest itself, they weren't allowed in. But the fact that they incorporated that was it was interesting. And you have these spirits that manipulate you on a psychological level to where you want to kill yourself. That is intriguing. That was a very intriguing premise, the way they set this up. And so I was buying into the backstory. I was actually buying into the minor characters. I don't think they did a terrific job as far as acting goes, but they did a much better job than a lot of horror movies I'd seen. And you had some nice shots in here that really did kind of mess with you, like mess with her as a main character, and had you kind of wondering what all was happening and what was going on. It had this nice little setup. Where it falls in the horror department is there just wasn't that many scares in this movie, honestly. Had an old lady and a little girl come out of it. The little girl was like, "Yeah, that was a little scarier than I thought," and the old lady was like, "Yeah, that didn't really scare me like I thought it would. Didn't really have enough scares to it." An old lady. I'm sorry. If you can't scare an old lady, you certainly can't scare me. Well, maybe you can. I don't know. But I'm just saying, it didn't really feel like it worked in that regard. There was more jump scares than anything, and there were very few. I don't mind them not being in the very beginning when we're trying to establish the characters and the reason that this story is happening. But once you get into the actual forest, there should have been more scare moments. More moments to really twist with you to where you're wondering what's going on. And there wasn't. There was more jump scares and then, dream sequences for scares even. And I felt like they kind of overreached. They had this good idea, but they really overreached with it. Like they shoehorned in the ending. It just came out of nowhere. Just suddenly started going that route. And it's like, well, why are y'all doing that? And I thought they were going to go a completely different way. And if they had done this way, it would have been a little more creative. It would have worked for me. And it would have... I can't reference the other horror movie that it's done. But there's another horror movie that does kind of the same vein that I was hoping to see here. Kind of the similar thing where everything's not what you think it is, basically. And I would have liked that kind of ending. And that's not what I got. So the jump scares didn't really work for me. The psychological part of it, which is what this kind of horror movie I think was intending to be, they kind of overdid it in aspects of it. It just didn't work. And there's some things that worked just fine earlier on in the movie, but near the ending of the movie, I didn't really buy into it. I didn't really care enough about it. And at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a horror movie, and it didn't deliver on being a horror movie. Was it intriguing? Yes, absolutely. The setup was intriguing. The setup worked. I think the acting overall was fine. I think visually, the non-horror elements of it, I think the forest itself was beautiful. I think there was some good shots, but there's some moments where I almost wanted to roll my eyes because I was like, that just doesn't work. I don't buy into it. So all that going for it, my brother actually enjoyed this more than a Hateful Eight, and he said about like a 5 to 6 is what he would have given it. I don't think I can go that high. I get what it was trying to do. I appreciate it for some of the stuff that it did do. It's not one of the worst horror movies in January I've seen, but it's just I can't really give it a positive rating. I just can't make it there. And yeah, as much as I didn't hate it, I don't even think I can give it the middle road. I can get it close, but that's about it. So I'm going to go with a 4.7 out of 10. Like I said, there's just, as a horror movie on its own and entirely, it just fails. It just fails. There was no moments that really stood out from that. As a setup, it was intriguing, but the ending part of the movie was rushed and felt like they overreached with it and just didn't work for me at all. So it didn't end on a good level. And as much as the beginning of it worked, the middle does drag on, and there's just stuff I was hoping would play out better. I will say this though, there's this whole aspect of it. This isn't really much of a spoiler. There's this whole aspect of it where the twins have this feeling, they can feel each other, and it ties in to the movie, and I actually like that because it gets brought up several times and it plays out throughout the movie, and I thought that worked really well. So there's some aspects of the movie which did work. I didn't really care, and that's unfortunate because I was hoping it would be better. But anyway, guys, so yeah, that's my opinion of it. But what did you think? Go ahead and comment below. Let me know. Hopefully you enjoyed this vid. Click that like button, subscribe to my channel, and watch my other vids. Don't forget to share your opinions. I love hearing from you guys. And until next time, peace.